everybody.
Hello.
My name is Shannon.
I'm Alyssa.
Welcome back to another episode of B Movie Bash.
B Movie Bash.
Yay. The energy is weird this week, folks.
Yes,
We're recording this on New Year's Day, so it's still like that in between, like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? In between holidays and the start of the year and going back to work.
I know. I haven't even started my resolutions yet.
I know. I already failed all of mine.
I think I
Day one.
did one last year. Mm-hmm.
Well, hey.
Yeah.
That's better than none.
I started it. That's the thing. It got there.
Okay.
Yeah. I have it written down somewhere. Anyway, that was before. No, was it? No, I didn't make any for last year. That was the year before.
That was 2020.
That was 2020.
Yeah, it's been a whole...
Back when I thought the year was going to be...
A good one?
A good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope you had a good holiday.
Yes.
Or holidays. There was multiple of them. It was plural.
Yeah,
Anyway.
all of the holidays. Whatever you celebrate, I hope it was good.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm going to be reviewing today.
Yes.
We are going to be talking about 2002's They, which if you Google it, it comes up as Wes Craven's They.
Oh.
Which Wes Craven...
Yeah. His reputation precedes.
Yes. I don't think he had anything to do with this other than his name. He normally makes decent movies, but this one I just... Anyway, here's the synopsis.
Okay.
So a psychology student...
Wait, you didn't say what it was named.
They.
Oh, yes, you did.
Yeah. It was like...
God. Okay.
So a psychology student finds all her childhood fears and phobias become real after a traumatic event.
Oh, okay.
So, yes.
What's the rating?
It's a 4.8 out of 10.
Okay.
Yes. I don't believe it deserves that rating.
I do not agree with that assumption at all.
Very much don't agree with that, but we're going to get into it. Okay.
Okay.
So, the movie starts off with a thunderstorm, and a young boy is laying in bed crying out for his mother. And she comes in and she's like, "What is it, honey?" And he's like, "I'm scared." And she's like, "It's just thunder." And he goes, "I know, I'm scared of thunder." And she's like, "Okay." And they're sitting there and she's trying to like, "It's okay, honey, you're fine. Your father and I are downstairs. Everything's going to be okay." And he's like, "Yeah, but they, Allah sign, or not science.
Sixth Sense?
Sixth Sense goes, "They come for me in the dark."
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like whispers it to her and she's like, "Okay." She's like, "You're fine. It's okay. Let me check under the bed for you, you know." Yeah. So she peeks under the bed, doesn't see anything, and then gets up. She's like, "See, you're perfectly fine. There's nothing there. Don't forget you're under your sheets, or like get under your sheets and your sheets will protect you.
Place.
That's your safe place, right?"
Yeah. Can I interject really quick? So I have an almost 4-year-old, and last night...
No, he's not.
He's turning 4 in February.
No, he's not. Oh my gosh.
4.
Yep.
But yeah, so I have an almost 4-year-old, and last night he woke up, this morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, he woke up, and he came into my bed, and I was like, "We're gonna go lay back in your bed, buddy." And he was like, "No, there's a dog in there." And I was like, we own a dog, so maybe, okay. Milo doesn't sleep in there, but okay. And I was like, "We have a dog? We have a cat? Like, what is he talking about?" So we went and laid in bed, and he, like, rolled over toward the wall, and he goes, "Ha, ha, ha." And I was like, "What?" And he pointed at his pillow, and, like, the corner of the pillow was, like, flipped up a little bit, and he was like, "I thought that was a dog." It's like, that's what you were scared of, and you came into my room at 5 o'clock in the morning for, and then didn't go back to sleep? Ugh.
He's so cute.
He's the best, but oh my god, sometimes.
Anyway, sorry.
Yes.
So she's like, "It's okay, honey, like, go back to bed. You know, you're okay. Dad and I are downstairs." And he's like, "Well, will you leave the door open to crack?" And she's like, "Yeah, I will," so that he can see the hallway light, you know. Yeah. And which is, you know, that's pretty normal stuff, right? So she leaves. He's kind of laying there, and he's got one of those night lamps, or like that's like a roving picture that keeps like rotating around.
Casts shadows and stuff.
Yeah, and so that's doing that. And I was like, that's plenty of fucking light in your room.
How old is he?
How
old does he look, Alyssa?
No, well, I think the movie said he was 5.
Oh, okay.
So I don't have to check. But yeah, so he's like 5 or 6 or something like that.
So yeah, that's a nightlight in itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, yeah, but he wanted the door open, and I'm like, I feel that, because then you've got a straight shot out of the room if anything scares
but also,
you. Like,
if it's closed, nothing comes in without you knowing.
True. But it's things coming in from the closet, not from out in the hallway.
True.
So, like,
if that's what you're worried about, then fine.
Yeah. So he's laying there. He finally starts to drift off to sleep. But as he's sleeping, his bedroom door slowly closes.
Oh, no.
So, yeah. You just kind of hear it creaking, and then it shuts. And he wakes up from that and is like, what the fuck? You know, looking around kind of a thing, like, what just happened, you know? And then we hear his closet door creak open. And he's like,
no.
And also looks over, and because it's pouring rain outside, like pouring rain, still thunder and everything. And I was like, where the fuck rains like this? I guess they're in New York. Anyway, so it's just pouring rain, and he looks over at the window, and the rain is like whatever's hitting the window is now starting to trail upwards instead of down, which doesn't make sense for the rest of the movie because it just, I don't know. But it does that.
Okay. It's just like, here's a creepy creep.
Yeah, I was like,
throwing that in there.
Because they don't do it for fucking anything else in the movie. So like,
okay.
Anyway.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I guess there's water involved and all the rest, but like it doesn't matter.
Maybe it's just like to get your attention and be creepy.
I guess it's just to be creepy, yeah. But then he looks over and he sees something crawling inside of his closet.
No.
And I just have to say, I was trying to figure out like what the sounds these creatures make when they move, because they make a lot of like weird kind of purry, like just kind of noises too.
Okay.
Like just like verbally they're doing that, but their bodies make noise while they're moving too. And I figured it out that it's probably what a big old gallon-sized Ziploc bag filled with Jello and bones would feel like if you're like moving that around. So like,
ew.
Yeah, it's just like the weird, like you can hear it clacking against each other, but also
it's,
like
muted and like,
yeah,
ew.
Like, gross. Yeah. So like
Your brain.
I didn't make up the movie.
I mean, yeah,
but anyway, so he looks up and he sees this thing, and it is clearly crawling upwards, right? But then its head snaps back at him, like over its back.
No.
And like screeches at him. So he flings his covers over himself, grabs the flashlight that was on his nightstand, right? Mm-hmm. He's got the flashlight on, and he's just like, oh my gosh, like freaking out, because I would be too.
Yeah.
Anyway, he hears the things moving around in his room, knocking like some of his toys off the shelves and stuff, and he's just like,
No.
Like, he does yell for his mom a couple times, but she doesn't come upstairs.
She's like, oh, that child.
Yeah, right? And so he's just kind of sitting there hanging out, and then it gets really quiet. So he goes, okay, maybe I'm awake now, maybe whatever it is gone, you know, like it's, you know. So he pulls his sheets off of his head.
Never do that.
And his flashlight also flickers out. So he's like, he
no.
can't see anything anymore, you know.
You're
But
doomed.
his like nightstand is still going, the nightlight's still going. Anyway, and then something grabs him by the feet, yanks him off the bed, and yanks him underneath the bed as he screams into the darkness.
The end.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
What a great story.
So the next scene, we see Julia riding on a bicycle down New York Street, okay? And she has the worst haircut I've ever seen on a person in a very long time.
Okay.
Like, it's just short. It's so short, but it's not boy cut short. It's like, it like cups around, like, I'll find a picture for you later, but, or
What
I'm going to do it
time
right now.
era is...
That's her
Yeah,
hair.
it's like a weird bob
But not.
question mark.
Yeah.
I mean, that looks straight out of like 1997. So
Yeah.
I mean,
But it's just, it's so bad. And she just doesn't wear it well either. Like, the only time she wears it well is, like, at a funeral later, because she's got it kind of slicked back, and she's got a couple of, like, pins in there. So, like, it looks cute at the funeral, but it doesn't look cute
Any other time.
Yeah, and I hate it. Anyway, so she's riding her bike through the streets of New York. She gets up to her apartment, and again, I don't understand how these fucking college students who aren't going to school are affording these ridiculously big, like, big apartments.
aren't going to school or aren't working?
Oh, aren't working.
Okay.
She's going to school for her master's degree. She got no money.
Yeah.
None whatsoever.
She gave all of it to the school.
Yeah. Like, and unless her mother's paying for it, I don't fucking know. Because, like, it's a nice apartment, too,
Yeah.
you know? And her boyfriend doesn't even have that nice of apartment. And he lives with roommates. So, like...
Okay.
I don't know. Anyway, so she gets home, she goes and she starts listening to her answering machine. And the first one's from her, like, overbearing mother who's like, I want to make sure you're taking your medication. And she, like, skips.
Oh, boy.
And the second one is from a college professor who's, like, setting up a time for her final defense, which is her defending her thesis for, you know, to graduate kind of a thing.
Master's degrees sound awful.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Not only do you have to, like, study all this shit and pass all the tests, you have to sit in front of some people and be like, this is my thesis, and this is why I think it is the way that it is.
Like,
and
why
they
do
have
you-
to be like, I agree.
Why do you need an entire fucking thesis as, like, your final? Like, can't I just take my classes and you can be like, master?
Right? So she's like, he's just like, yeah, this day at this time will work. Like, this is when it's gonna be. And she's all like, okay, all right, awesome. And then the next one is from a friend being like, hey, you need to get with the times, get email, stop with the voicemails. And I'm like, everyone still has voicemail today. Like, it is 2022.
I saw the look on your face, like, switches. You were like, it's 2022. Oh, that's gross. Ugh.
I know, we're getting old.
Ugh. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this movie was 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Ew.
Mm-hmm.
Ew.
Yep. And then the next couple voicemails are from her boyfriend, whose name is Paul. We don't find out till, like, way later. I was retaking the notes, and I was just like,
what is his name?
Who are you? But, like, anyway, so he's her boyfriend, and we find out that he's an EMT. And he's like, okay, I don't have to work tonight like I thought I was going to, so we're going to go out to dinner. And she responds to the voicemail out loud, like, I can't, I have to study. And his voicemail goes, and don't say you can't, you have to study, because we're going to go. I'm picking you up at 8, right? And she's like, oh, Paul.
Oh, you.
Oh, Paul, right? So they go out. They're at some bar, you know, just talking and drinking and stuff. And he's all like, well, I'm really excited for your defense that you're having. Like, you're going to have your master's degree soon, blah, blah, blah. And then you can psychoanalyze me. And she's like, well, I can do that right now.
Of course.
And
it's psychology.
Yep.
Is there any other master degree?
Apparently
I'm convinced
not.
there is not.
Apparently not.
Do you go to law school or you get your master's in psychology and there's nothing in between?
Nope.
At least in horror movies.
Exactly. Yeah. They're all like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be psychological. Anyway.
Yeah.
So she's like, I could do that right now, and then kind of psychoanalyzes him, and he's like, oh, my turn. Let me psychoanalyze you. And so he's like, you know, like they're just flirting and joking back and stuff. We learned very quickly that he's a pretty good boyfriend, right? Like he's pretty empathetic. He's pretty like understanding of her, and just like, you know, he's really supportive of her as well. And they're playing a little bit of pool, they do some betting, and then just like, okay, well, let's go back to my apartment, you know, which I want to know why they would ever go back to his apartment, because he has roommates.
And she has this whole fucking apartment.
She lives by herself.
To herself.
So I have no idea why she would ever go to his place.
No.
No
Especially if you're gonna go back to your place.
Exactly, and that's
roommates.
What they were, right.
Hello.
So they were going back to his place to brown chicken, brown cow, but his roommates are home, and he's like, what are you guys doing here? I thought you were supposed to be gone. And they were like, yeah, I know we were supposed to, but they said something flaked on them, and I watched it, I read the subtitles, I don't understand, like, the subtitles do not match what they said, and I have no idea what word they said. So they were like, yeah, we we're here.
Live here.
Yeah, so we're gonna be here. And they're just drinking away, right? And Julia's just kind of like, But they're watching TV, and they're watching the news, which I don't understand why a bunch of, like, 25-year-old drunk roommates would be watching the news, but anyway.
Yeah.
So they're watching the news, and the news is talking about how there's, like, rolling blackouts all over the city, and they're expecting them to get worse, and da-da-da-da-da, like, people need to be saving power and shit like that, right? And Paul goes, speaking of that, did you guys pay the electricity bill? And they kind of look at each other, and they're like, about that. And he's like, did you guys lose your jobs again? And they were like, well, we were thinking more along the lines of, like, we're not even going to get to use the power, so why should we pay for it? And he was like, I hate you both. And he's like, do not come in my room. And, like, they go off into his room, you know?
Yeah.
And they start kissing, and this goes on for way too long. They kiss for like a good minute straight of them like kissing and then laying down on the bed and him kind of unzipping her dress, and that's like a full minute of them doing that. And in movies it's so fucking long.
It is.
Like it's
like
so
foreplay's important, but like I don't need to see it all.
Yeah, it's just so
Fast
long,
forward.
right? Well, her phone goes off, right? Phone rings, and he's like, you're not gonna answer that, right? And she's like, oh, it could be my college professor, like I need to answer it. And he's like, why would he
nighttime.
Yeah, he's like, why would he be calling you on a Friday night? And she's like, because I paged him. We don't get to see her page him, but whatever. Anyway, so she gets up. Yeah, she paged him. So she gets up and answers her phone, and she's like, hello. And then she's like, oh, hi, Billy. And he's in the background like, fucking Billy, man. Like,
Billy.
Oh, right? And Billy is her childhood friend, okay? He is also the child from the beginning of the movie.
Okay, so he did not die.
He didn't die.
Unless he did.
No.
Dun, dun, dun.
He didn't. And he's begging her. He's like in a really bad way right now. He really needs her to come see him. And she's like, well, I can't just leave in the middle of this right now. And Paul's in the background like, no, you can't. No. Like nodding his head and shaking his head. And she's like, I'm really kind of in the middle of something. And he's like, yes, we are, you know, kind of a thing. And he's like, please, like, I can't hear what he's saying on the phone, but she's like, okay, all right, okay, I'll meet you. I'll see you in a half hour, you know? And so Paul is like, really? You know, like, we're, you know.
You can't leave in the middle of this.
Yeah, and she's like, he sounds really terrible right now. And he's like, he always sounds terrible. And she's like, yeah, but it's like worse this time. And he's like, listen, I'm understanding. I get it. He's your best friend. You've been friends since you were 5. I get it.
But
you can't expect me to be too understanding, you know?
Yeah.
He's like, but whatever, it's fine. Go get him. Like, go do your thing. So she leaves, and she's taking the subway. We see the lights kind of flicker on and off while she's riding the subway, but she's like, it's not a big deal. There's other people on it, too, so she's not that freaked out. And it's New York, which is disgusting.
Yeah.
So she goes to meet him at some really gross-looking diner, and the sign just says diner. It's not like Pop's Diner. It's not like Ma's Diner. It's just diner. Just diner.
Come over to diner.
Diner. Yep.
Okay. Meet me at diner.
Yep. So she goes in, and there's, like, the place is super crowded. Like, there's tons of people in there. And it is pouring rain now at this point, too. Like, huge thunderstorm. Like, so much thunder and lightning outside and stuff. And we see Billy, who looks strung out as hell. Okay? Like, he looks pretty bad. Like, he looks tired and pale and just exhausted and just all this stuff, right? And she's like, Billy, you look like shit. And he's like, hi to you too, you know? And he's like, well, thanks for coming to meet me. And he keeps like kind of touching at this sore that's on his hand. And it looks pretty gnarly, you know? And she's like, what did you do to your hand? And he's like, it's whatever. And then the lights flicker. And he like terrified. Like, you know how they like pick up the coffee cup and they're like shaking and stuff, and like he's doing that as he's like, they're here, and she's like, what, Billy? No, whatever you're talking about, it's just it's a power surge from the storm. And he's like, no. And then a baby starts to cry, and he is just like, oh, they are here. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, babies and children can sense them, so if you ever hear a baby crying, you need to leave. And she's like, what are you talking about? You know? And he just starts going off about how they used to have night terrors as kids, and it's how they mark you, and it's how they like find you again, and now they're back to take him. And she's like, what? No, like, calm down, you know? And he's just like going off about that, like he's talking absolute nonsense. And she's like,
speaking of meds.
Yeah, like, it's, honey, what are you talking about here? You know, he's just like, he's really twitching and just very much looks like he's on drugs right there. You know, like he's very, you know, agitated and just freaking out. And he's just like, well, they affect the lights and the phones, and they affect power and electricity. And she's like, Billy, what are you talking about? Yeah. And he goes, I've been looking into it, trying to find more people like us, and I'm pretty sure Edgar Allan Poe was like us because all of his writing was so dark, and I think that he went crazy too, and like all this stuff. And she's like, what? And he's like, I made some friends and they have the same problems as us and stuff, but you know what I figured out? No one can help me. And she's like, Billy, I can help you. Like, I'm here. I can help you. And he's like, no, you can't. You can't help me. I have to work nights just so I can sleep during the day. My own mother thinks that I should be locked up in a mental institution and all this stuff, right? Aww. And she's like, and he's getting a little more agitated, and people in the diner are looking at him. The lights are still flickering. The baby's crying the whole time. So all of this is like really hyped up, and he's really hyped up. And he's just like, I'm scared. I'm scared, Julie. I'm scared. And she's like, Billy, it's okay. I'm right here. Like, we can get you help. And he's like, no one can help me. I have to do this. And he pulls out a gun. No. And he shoots himself in the mouth.
My God.
Puts the gun in his mouth, and yeah. And it sprays blood all over Julia's face. And people in the diner start freaking out and screaming and running as Julia's just kind of sitting there like in absolute shock. Right? Yeah. Later at her apartment, Julia's getting ready for bed. She's washing off her face in the bathroom, which she washed off the blood well before, but she's just kind of like washing her face again. Yeah. I would be doing it for days. Get a little refresher. Yeah. And her boyfriend is like getting her bed sheets all pulled back, and he's getting her tucked in. And I don't know why he didn't sleep in the bed with her, but he sleeps in the living room. And I don't know if he just thought he wanted to give her some space or whatever, because I'm like, I would have been like,
I do not need space. I need the least amount of space possible.
Lay right there next to me. Yeah. But he's like, okay, you know, well, they don't say goodnight. They're just kind of like looking at each other, you know, and he puts her to bed and he leaves, and she's laying there and it like looks over at her closet and sees that the closet door is kind of creaked open a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so she gets up and shuts it. And then she goes back to sleep. Paul in the living room is laying there like reading a magazine, listening to a Discman on his chest.
Oh my God.
And like, I just thought I was like, oh, Discman, yep. So she's asleep, and then all of a sudden her phone rings. So she flies up off the bed, because I would get startled too if I had that kind of a fucking ring. Yeah. Tone, or like the ringer. And so she answers it, and there's just a bunch of these weird garbled noises. And she's like, hello? And then it hangs up, and she's like, whatever, weird connection, and like hangs up the phone, right? And so she decides to get up to go find Paul in the living room, but he's not there. He's not on the couch. His Discman is, and the magazine he was reading is, but he's not. And so she's like, okay. Then she hears the shower turn on. She's like, oh, he must be in there. So she goes off into the bathroom. The shower's on, but he's not in the bathroom. And she's like, okay, what the hell is going on? And as all of this is going on, we can hear a neighbor's baby crying from down the hallway.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So she goes in there, and she doesn't see him in there, and the lights start kind of flickering, and the sink starts making this weird gurgly noise, and she's like, what the fuck? And, like, leans forward, and this black gloop goes, like, shooting up out of it. So she screams and kind of freaks out, and then all the lights shut off. And she's like, what the fuck is going on? Well, her medicine cabinet starts making weird noises. And so she, like, opens it to see what's going on. And it's like a portal into another dimension.
What the fuck?
Yeah, it's, like, weird and all goopy and this weird, like, dark just tunnel. And I'm like, we see this tunnel another time later on. And I'm like, do these creatures just live in the tunnel? Or is this the tunnel between their world and our world? Like, yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
So... yeah. But it's also, like, covered in what I would imagine if Venom from Spider-Man and a spider had a baby, and that's the kind of spider webs that a spider would be able to lay. Like, so, these, like, weird goopy...
Venom goop spiders.
Yeah, Venom, webs. Like, webs, right? Like, these just weird goopy webs. And so she's like, what the fuck? And, like, sticks her hands in and pulls out, and her hands are, like, covered in the goop, right?
Why would you reach in there?
I have no
I don't touch regular spider webs, let alone goopy fucking paranormal.
I know. I'm not touching any kind of shit like that. Anyway, yeah. So she's looking at it, and her hand starts, like, contorting and twitching, and, like, her fingers just kind of start crawling in, or, like, curling in on themselves, and, like, her fingers are just making these really weird, like, noises, you know, like the bags and the bones, you know, or the bones, bones. The jello and the bones of the bag kind of sound. So she freaks out and, like, slams the mirror shut, and then she sees a reflection of something in the mirror that she can't entirely figure out what it is, but it, like, kind of screams at her, so she starts screaming, right? Yeah. And then Paul comes sprinting into the bathroom. Her hand's not covered in goop anymore, the lights are on, she's just standing in the bathroom screaming, and he comes in and he's like, honey, what's wrong? She sees him but freaks out because she doesn't recognize him.
Yeah,
she doesn't
she's
realize.
Like, presence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she shoves him into the mirror, and the mirror breaks even more, and she's just, like, screaming. And, like, they had to keep doing all these, like, flashy scenes, you know, to make it seem like it's even more terrifying because he's yelling at her to calm down, and she just keeps screaming. And I imagine while they were filming this, because she isn't, like, she's kind of flailing at him, but they keep doing these weird, like, extra angles and all this stuff. And I would just be laughing watching this happening on screen because she's just standing there, like, shaking her head and, like, flailing her arms, and it's just like, no, like, I probably would have laughed way too hard at the filming of this because it was just, anyway, so he just starts, like, finally, like, yells at the top of his, like, voice so that she can hear him. He's like, Julia, I'm not gonna hurt you. And she's like, oh, like, kind of starts to come back to it, and he's like, hey, I'm here, I'm gonna protect you, like, what's going on? Aww. And she's like, how did I get here? And he's like, okay, you must have been sleepwalking, honey, it's okay, come here, and, like, holds her, and she's just kind of like, what the fuck is going on? And, like, just, you know, so she thinks she was having a nightmare and just all that stuff, right? Yeah. So I'm guessing it's a few days later because there's no way a funeral would be ready the next day. Anyway, there's a few days later, Julia is at Billy's funeral. Yeah. She talks to his parents for half a second, and then she goes walking around, and she's just kind of, like, looking at all these people who she doesn't know. They're just all these other adults, you know?
Yeah, his family.
And this guy walks up to her, and he goes, it's really nice to see somebody else here who was born after 1950, you know? And she was like, oh, hi, and stuff. And he's like, hi, I'm Sam. And this girl walks up, and he's like, and this is Terry, my roommate. We were Billy's friends. We were roommates with him in college. And she was like, oh, it's nice to meet you. I didn't, sorry, Billy's never mentioned you. Like, I haven't been talking to him much lately, kind of a thing. And they were like, that's all right. How did you know Billy? And she's like, well, I'm Julia. And they were like, oh. Julia. Like, oh, Julia. Yeah. And she's like, okay. But my favorite is that Sam, I was like, who the fuck is this dude? He looks really familiar. And I had to go and IMDb him, you know?
Yeah, as you do.
And a lot of people might recognize him as a character from Once Upon a Time. He's just a dude. He's just a dude. So, like, did you watch?
No.
Okay, yeah.
I would know, like, some main characters if you told me.
Oh, yeah, no, he's a dude. He's a guy that shows up to, like, stop Once Upon a Time from being a thing.
It's like that guy who's in one episode of SVU, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
I know you.
I mean, he's been in a lot of things, but I think that's the thing that most people would recognize him from, if they're, you know. And then the girl, Terry, she's been in quite a few things as well, but I recognized her immediately as Mercedes from The Count of Monte Cristo. Okay. So she also has this, like, ridiculous ridiculous like accent that's amazing. I love it. I can't figure out where she's from. I bet if I googled where she was from,
you can just look on IMDb.
But I like the mystery.
Okay.
I just like know she's got this amazing accent. Anyway,
okay.
Yeah. So they're talking to her and they're like, "Did he say anything to you before?" You know, and she was like, "Yeah, he was just kind of talking crazy, you know, like just." And they were like, "Yeah, I mean, I get that. He was just meh, you know." And she's like, he sounded like he was on drugs again, right?" And she was like, "Do you know if he was on anything?" And Sam said something along the lines of like he was only on Prozac. Something else that like, because he's got a really dark humor. I don't get what he said was offensive, but like she took it as offensive and was just like, "Well, excuse me," and walked away. And Terry's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you just said that." And I was like, "He just said he was on Prozac. What the fuck is that? Why is that offensive?" Anyway. So Julia goes upstairs to Billy's room because they're at his house and stuff. And she goes upstairs to his room and she walks in and there's like the walls are covered with newspaper articles and these odd religious symbols and like masks and like things, you know, just like weird things, you know. He also has like tons of just like lighters and flashlights and drawers full of batteries. Aww. And she's like, "What the fuck is this about?" Right? And Terry comes in and she's like, "Hey, sorry about Sam. He's just, it's how he copes, you know." And Julia goes, "Well, I'm just going through a really hard time right now." Okay. And Terry was like, "We all are." Yeah. And Julia was like, too. "Right, okay, yeah, I need to stop being a bitch about this," right? So she calms down pretty quick. Yeah, so she's like, "Okay, well, all right." And so they start chatting for a little bit about how Billy had moved back home like 3 months ago and that they haven't been in contact very much recently, but he would talk to her occasionally about how they used to have night terrors as kids. And like that was his big thing, was that like his whole world revolved around that they had night terrors as kids. And she was like, "That's actually how we met. Sam and I used to have night terrors when we were kids as well, you know." And that's, you know, it wasn't until like we were friends for a few years that we discovered that he did, and but that he had like sought us out for some reason. And I was like, how do you like find that out about people?
Anyway. Do you like put an ad on Craigslist or like what?
Anyway. And so Julia was like, "Well, what was he saying to you?" And he was like, "You know, just that we all had the same problems and that we need to stay in the light." And that's the end of that conversation. So Julia's driving home. I don't know if she's driving home from the funeral or if she's just driving home one night, because she wasn't in the same outfit she was wearing at the funeral and her hair was different. Anyway, but she's driving and she's listening to some really weird CD that I probably should have I like Shazammed the song, but like the song was pretty short. But anyway, it was just a really weird song. Anyway, so her car starts acting up, like the CD starts skipping and all the lights in her car kind of start flickering and stuff, and she's like, "What the fuck?" You know, trying to figure out what it's doing. But she sees something in the road and she's like, "Oh, I better stop." And then it comes flying at her windshield. So she screams, her battery starts freaking out even more, so she like drives off the side of the road, right? Good. But like doesn't crash anything. Her car just kind of like stops. And so she's like, "Okay, oh my gosh, fuck," you know? And she tries to like turn over the car. It won't turn on. So she gets out of the car with a flashlight and she goes to like go mess with the battery. Don't do that. No. She's literally like jiggling the connections. Don't.
Do you want to get shot?
I know. Don't do that.
And
Call
die?
AAA.
Roadside assistance,
right?
my friends.
But she starts hearing this weird noise off to the side, like this weird little, like the weird purring noise, that, you know, like the sounds that these creatures are making as she's like jiggling the battery cables. And then the cables, of course, spark because
weird,
you know,
science.
Yeah. And the creature, whatever it was, noises that were happening, like makes a like freaked out sound, you know. And she's like, "What the fuck is that?" And like shines her flashlight around and doesn't see anything. So she thought she saw something, but then it wasn't there. And she's like, "Okay, this is weird." So she's just kind of freaked out, decides to get back in her car and is like, I don't know what she thought she was going to do. But she gets back in her car and goes to try to start it again. And then you hear Julia right next to her. And so she turns and there's Billy sitting in her passenger seat. So she screams and goes flying out of the driver's seat and hits the road. Right then, a big truck passing by like honks its horn at her. And she's like, "Oh my gosh," and like tries like, it swerves to avoid her, you know, and because she's like driving down this lonely road in New York. She's out in the middle of nowhere too, like middle of nowhere. Like,
of course.
Yeah. But because of that, the car, or her lights turn back on in her car, her radio starts playing again, like just
like normal. Yeah.
And she was like, "What the fuck?" So she gets in her car, she drives off, and she's like, "This is Too freaky. Well, she decides to go to Paul's apartment because she's freaked out, you know? So she gets there and she just like walks in. Like I didn't even hear a key jingle or anything. She just opens the door and I was like, this is New York. Nobody's living in an apartment where they're not like this shady of an apartment.
You're locking the door.
You're locking the door.
Yeah.
But she walks in and she sees beer bottles all over the place. They're all drinking, having a good time, listening to music, yucking it up. And she comes in and he sees her and he's like, oh, welcome home, honey. And like, I don't know why he didn't go to the funeral with her, but he had to work. Anyway, I guess that's what it was. But then again, I'm like, I feel like he would have gone to the funeral with her if he didn't have to work. But this didn't make it seem like it was right after the funeral. But I don't know why she's driving out in the middle of nowhere if it's not right after the funeral. Anyway, so she gets there.
Maybe it was like she had to travel for the funeral.
Maybe.
And then that was her coming home, but not the same night.
Maybe.
Or something.
That could be it. Yeah. Anyway, so she sees that he's drinking and she's like, are you drunk? And he's like, well, I prefer intoxicated. Kind of like, you know, he's drunk, obviously, so he thinks everything's fucking hilarious. And she's like, and like leaves. And he's like, what? And like goes after her and she's like, what? He's like, what is going on? Like, I'm just having a few drinks with my roommates. Like, what's... And she's like, I was in an accident. And he's like,
was I supposed to know that?
And he's like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Are you hurt? And like, he's clearly trying to like sober up and talk to her, you know? And he's like, are you hurt? And she's like, no. And he's like, well, what happened? And she's trying to explain to him really poorly that she saw something in the road, that she thought she hit it. And he's like, well, was it an animal? And she's like, I don't know what it was. And like, just all this stuff. And she's like, I ran off the side of the road. But she's like, not explaining anything very well to him, like, whatsoever. And he's just like...
And he's drunk.
And he's like, okay, so what did you think you hit? Like, an alien? And, like, kind of jokes at her. And she's like, I knew it. I shouldn't have come here. I knew it. And he's like, babe, come on, and stuff. And he's like, what do you
expect me to say?
Yeah, if you don't know what you hit, what am I supposed to, you know? And she's like, I knew you were just going to make fun of me. And he's like, I'm not making fun of you. What is going on, you know? And she's like, oh, I just don't like that you think that I'm acting crazy. And he's like, listen.
I did not say that, first
exactly.
of all.
And he's like, do you know what I've been doing for the last 12 hours? And she's like, what? And he's like, I was at a 13-car pileup on the freeway, and I've been spending the last 12 hours cutting bodies out of vehicles. So I wanted to wind down and have some drinks with my buddies, okay? And he's like, I'm just really frustrated right now that you're more concerned about what's going on in your head than what's going on with reality. And then, like, storms back off to his room. And she's like, I can't believe you're talking to me like that, kind of a thing. And I'm like, I'm on his side. What are you talking about? Like, if anything, sure, it's actually happening, okay? But he doesn't know that. Yeah. He wasn't there with you.
And she's not telling him.
And she's not telling him anything. Yeah. She's not explaining anything well, which is, I totally get how you're like, I don't know, something was in the road and then it attacked my car. Yeah. I don't think it was an animal. I don't know what it was to describe it to you. It could have been an alien. Maybe it was. I don't know. Like, you know, and we're supposed to be mad at him for this. Like, doesn't, I'm not mad at him for this. I'm on his side. Anyway, so the next day she goes to go meet up with Sam and Terry and they're showing her Billy's journal, which I don't know where they got it from, probably his room. Yeah. And they're reading a few of the dark things saying that the light is the only thing that can keep them safe. And they're like, you know, like, have you heard any of this before? And she's like, yeah, it just kind of sounds like some of the stuff he was saying when we were, like, at, you know, the diner on the night he died. And they were like, well, have you had any recent night terrors lately? And she's like, yeah, I think I have. Like, it just, you know, and they were like, we have too. And she was like, guys, listen, we've had a traumatic experience. We're just kind of regressing. It's perfectly normal for us to be going into, like...
You're definitely not infected with whatever this fucking bullshit is.
Yeah.
Definitely
like, she's like, no, because she's obviously the therapist here. Yeah. So she's like, I'm going to psychoanalyze all of us, right? Yeah. And Terry goes, well, you know, when I was 5, I watched my sister drown in a pond. Right? After that, I started having really bad night terrors, okay? Like, which is, you know.
Understandable.
Pretty understandable. Okay. And she's like, and it was really bad. And she goes, one night was extra bad. She's like, I was so scared. My parents woke up to me screaming and they ran into my room to see, like, to check on me, but I wasn't there. And so they started checking the entire house and they weren't able to find me in the entire house. She's like, my mother thought I'd been kidnapped, right? Oh. And she's like, finally, my dad goes in the backyard and checks the doghouse and he finds me in the doghouse. So he's like, and of course he reaches in to grab me. And she goes, and that's when I stabbed him in the eye with a kitchen knife. Oh, and I was like, oh my gosh, right? And she was like, I was absolutely convinced that he was a demon coming for me. Like,
Jeez.
she's like, there was nothing you could do that would have told me at that moment that wasn't a demon, that was my father. And she's like, I just feel like I'm being watched, and Sam feels the same way. You know, like we walk into a room or a dark room. I'm a 25-year-old woman. I walk into a dark room and suddenly it's like I'm 5 again. And, you know, she's like, this is too spooky for me, you know? Yeah. And she's like, well, Julia's over here like, I don't know what to tell you. So she goes to go she goes to go see her old child psychologist who helped her when she had night terrors. And that's how she had met Billy, actually, is that they had met while they were going to visit this same therapist for their night terrors. And I guess that's what he specializes in, is child psychology and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so they're talking for a few minutes, and then she's like, oh yeah, I'm going for my master's in psychology. And he's like, oh, that's so exciting, but what are you doing outside of school? Yeah. And she's like, well, I haven't been doing very well lately. I think I'm regressing into my night terrors. And he goes, are you regressing, or are you just having like a stressful time right now? And she's like, I really don't even know what's going on. And he goes, well, I normally don't treat adults. I'm a child psychologist. And he goes, but we have history together. Let's start meeting every week for a little bit to like
help you through whatever this is.
Yeah, and he's like, we'll figure out if it's just stress or if
it's a full-blown
night terror. Yeah. And he's like, so we'll work through this for you. And she's like, okay, thanks, you know. And he goes, well, if I remember correctly, like you started coming here when you were 5 because you were having night terrors, like, and you started having them after your father killed himself, right? And she was like, yeah, that's true. And he's like, see, it's a traumatic experience. You're probably just stressed and fatigued because you, like,
going
you
back
told
to that
me,
place.
yeah. He's like, you told me that you've got your defense for your theory coming up, and you're probably just super stressed out from that. Like, your friend just killed himself. Like, it's a tough time for you right now. Not, you know.
Life kind of sucks right now.
Yeah. And, yeah, anyway, he's like, so I'll see you again next week. And she's like, okay, awesome, thanks. So she goes to her storage room of her apartment, like, you know how they have, like, the basement where they just have all those, like, cages of lockers. Yeah. So, yeah. So she goes there, and she finds a box of all this stuff from, like, her psychology stuff from when she was a little kid. Like, all of her... And I'm like...
You don't just, like, get those when you leave.
Yeah. I'm like, if anything, your mother would have them. Why would your mother be like, well, you're moving out. Here's all the shit saying you were a crazy child. Like,
yeah. Here, have these in your apartment.
Yeah.
I mean, unless it is a family apartment.
No, it's just her.
Well, I know, but, like, if they own it,
I guess.
Or something,
yeah.
maybe.
But
yeah, you have to, like, request that shit.
Yeah.
Which,
so
I mean, they like, very well could have.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right.
So, while she's down there, all this, like, spooky noises are happening, but she gets spooked by a neighbor and, like, hurries back upstairs, you know. And while that's all happening, Sam and Terry are at their flat, and Sam is painting, because he's an artist, and all of his paintings are just black. He's just painting black on black, right?
Okay.
But to him, it makes sense. To him, it's that terror that
them
he feels.
Them in the darkness.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And Terry goes, what do you think was going through Billy's mind when he killed himself? And Sam goes,
Don't.
He goes, I don't know, a bullet? And she's like, Sam! And he's like, I don't know, Terry, maybe all the regular bullshit about how he hates himself and life sucks and blah, blah, blah.
Surprised he made it that far. If
I know.
His every day was what they're going through right now.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah. But worse, his was worse. So, like, yeah.
No wonder he was on drugs.
Yeah.
And not the good kind.
Yep. And so Terry, annoyed, like, just starts picking at this mark she has on her ankle.
Oh, boy.
And he's like, Terry, if you keep picking at it, it's not going to heal. And she's like, it's not going to heal anyway, so I might as well pick at it, like, and stuff. And he's like, whatever.
Okay.
And so he's like, you know what? I need to get out of the apartment for a little bit. He's like, I need to detox. He's apparently been, like, chain smoking for hours. So he's like, I need to get out. Lights up another cigarette and walks out the door.
That's not how you do that.
Okay, bye. But they live in one of those, like, flats that has the elevators, you know, like, it has a front door that you can, like, leave and go out a hallway, but it also has the elevator that you can go up and down.
Yeah.
So he leaves out the elevator, and she's just kind of, like, trying to read, but he starts hearing, like, weird noises. The elevator comes back up by itself, even though no one's in it, and I'm like, it could have just been him sending it back up, but whatever. But then she hears, like, a snap sound in their air vent, and she goes, I got you, and then pulls off the vent AC, and we see a bunch of rats scurrying around, and she's like, you damn rats, you know? And
she, like,
in
New York.
Yeah, so she flicks on a lighter, and she goes to go pick up a rat trap, because I think she thought there was a rat in it or something, but there's not. Okay. And so it snaps, and it scares her, and makes her drop her lighter, right?
Yeah.
And she looks up, and she sees this weird kind of shadowy figure, but she thinks it's just, like, a couple of rats or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So she, like, picks up her lighter, and she's trying to get it to flick back on, and it's just taking a good minute to flick on, you know, and the shadow thing just kind of like starts bone in a bag creeping at her, you know, and
Bone jello.
yeah, and then right at the last second, as it jumps at her, she manages to get the lighter to flick on. But she clearly doesn't see it, like, really coming at her.
Yeah.
Until right then when she lights the lighter, and it's right there in her face. And she's like, oh my gosh! And, like, freaks out. And then there's nothing there.
It kind of reminds me of, is it Lights Out? Excuse you. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Lights Out?
Yeah.
Lights Off?
Lights Out.
Out.
Yeah.
That's what it makes me think of.
Yep.
Like the little...
Yeah, kind of. And so she's like, okay, whatever. And, like, gets out of the vent. Julia's back home, and she puts on a tape from when she had night terrors. They had her, like, they were monitoring her at the hospital and recording it, right?
Yeah.
Well, she watches her younger self waking up in the middle of the night, screaming her head off and, like, getting up and pounding against the wall, begging for help. We can't hear any of it, but, like, we can see it. She looks so scared, right? And Julia, like, starts tearing up and crying from it because she obviously remembers being that scared, you know, like, it's that terrifying.
Well, and you're like, and my poor baby self, I just want to, like, squish
want to
you.
help you, and, like, but she can't. Anyway, so all of a sudden her phone rings, and she freaks out, runs over and grabs it, and it's one of her friends, and she's like, hey, how's the studying going? And she's like, not very well at all. Like, I'm totally distracted. I can't get through this thing. Yeah, and she's like, yeah, well, I mean, your defense is tomorrow, so, like, you got to get that all figured out. She's like, yeah, I know. Like, oh my gosh. And she's like, will you call me again in a little while to make sure I'm still awake? And her friend's like, yeah, I'll talk to you soon. And she's like, okay, bye. So she gets off the phone with her and goes to, like, look at the books, her school books. And she's just like, I can't. And goes back to her box, right? So she's looking through the box. And for some reason, I don't know why she has all this stuff. Okay.
Okay.
But she's picking up books that have, like, religious symbols and everything. And she's, like, opening to pictures that are, like, paintings of, like, what people thought night terrors used to be back then, that they were obviously demons sitting on the end of your beds and things like that. So she's, like, flipping through these books of all this stuff. And I was like, why do you have this stuff? Billy, I totally get. Yeah. Why do you have this in a box of shit?
Did she take it from his house? No. Okay.
No, she didn't take any of that shit.
Okay.
So I don't know why she has all of this. Like, obviously it's, like, to make the movie, like, oh, you know, but I'm over here like...
That makes no sense.
But why do you have it?
She seems more like, I had night terrors, they're in the past, they haven't affected me for years, I'm fine.
Yeah. She's very much just like, no, all of this is ridiculous, like, I'm a psychologist, I'm smart, like, I'm not crazy.
So why would she have that?
I don't know why she would have this. Anyway, so she's looking through all the box, and she's also looking through, like, her documents of being at the hospital, and, like, the psychologist notes and everything about, like, how she's got paranoid delusions and all these things, and, like, like, she's 5.
Yeah.
She's 5.
That's okay.
And this bitch is sitting on the floor. Okay, she's sitting on the floor in front of her coffee table, just kind of looking at everything, which is fine. Sit on the floor, that's okay. Except she kind of starts to get a little tired. Does she get up on the couch to fall asleep? No. She turns around, grabs a pillow.
Lays down on the ground?
No.
Okay.
She puts her head on the pillow on the couch, sits on the floor, head on the couch, and falls asleep.
Maybe she has a very uncomfortable couch. Okay. Like, I'm not leaving this spot. I will just have a
She
pillow.
just turns and just like, okay, good night. Like, still sitting cross-legged on the floor. Is just like, I'll just sleep like this.
Okay.
Okay. This is like alien Nicole shit.
That's exactly what I'm picturing.
Yeah.
Honestly. Like, her sitting on the couch with her sneakers on, with her weird-ass short haircut because it's 2002 or whatever the fuck. That's exactly what I've been picturing this whole time. Yeah. And, like, her apartment, and, like, yeah.
It's just... so dumb.
Long Distance, if you haven't watched that one.
Yeah, go watch that one. Terry decides, I guess, to go to the local rec center and go swimming. Okay. Even though it's the middle of the night. It's New York. I guess everything's open constantly. Okay. So she goes to go swimming, and she's hearing weird noises the whole time. You know, just like she's in the locker room trying to get changed and just keeps hearing weird noises that freaks herself out. So she's like, fuck it. I'm just going to go swimming. We're going to go. So she goes and dives into the pool, is swimming a little bit. There's only one other person in the pool that's swimming with her, right? And because I'm like, it's super late. It's
who's like, it's 1 a.m. Let's go swimming.
Yeah. So she's out there swimming, and then she looks up and she sees people like leaving past, some weird kind of stained glass. Anyway, so people are leaving. The dude that was swimming in the pool gets out of the pool and just kind of like goes off to like the locker room. He like looks down at his watch, kind of like, okay, all right, you know, he's done.
Gotta go.
Yeah, he's gotta go. And she's like, okay, I'm alone in the pool now, right? But she's like, okay, it's fine, it's cool. I'm in a public place, this is fine. So she goes.
That's where you get murdered.
I know. So she goes to keep swimming.
It's like people in horror movies have never watched a horror movie before.
It's true. It's like horror movies don't exist.
No.
It's ridiculous.
They do all the stupid things.
Yeah. So as she's swimming, all the lights in the pool flicker out, you know.
No.
And she hears this splash sound behind her of something getting into the water. And she's like, nope. And like desperately swims out of the pool. And I think she gets out right before the things grab at her. We don't get to see that though, but that's like what the music made it sound like, that she managed to get out. And she tries to go into her locker room, but the doors won't open. So she runs over to the men's locker room and manages to get that door open, which is really weird because she's yanking at it, but then they show her like pushing it open. But then it's like the other door, like it's just the opposite direction of how she was pulling on the door. Oh. So like she's pulling on it on the right side of the door,
and then
but then
when she on the left side.
But then it opens on the left side, and anyway.
Okay.
So she gets in there and she's like, "Oh, okay. I'm all right. I'm okay." But no one's in the locker room. Yeah. So she's like, "Okay." A couple of the locker doors just kind of creak open on their own, you know, and she's like, "Oh, fuck." So she backs up, turns around to go back out the door, and that's where one of the creatures screams at her and grabs her, and the screen goes black. Okay. Yes. So, next morning, Julia wakes up, suddenly realizing she's been asleep on the floor and hasn't studied at all. And she like, "Oh, fuck," gets up, you know. So she runs over. She's like rushing to get ready because her defense is today, you know? Yeah. So she's grabbing all her paperwork that she needs, and she gets ready. She rides her bike frantically over to the school so that she can get there. And she's sitting there, like, telling her theory to these two other, like, college professors or something, okay? And the one is smoking a cigar. Okay. And I'm like, sir. Sir.
I mean, we live in a place where you cannot smoke indoors at all. Yeah. And I prefer it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
But also, like,
but why? A cigar? Like, a cigarette is one thing. Cigarettes
He's a fancy
stink.
Man.
But cigars
fancy
reek.
Man, they do.
They reek.
I don't know how they taste good. I think you're all lying about it.
Exactly. I think you're like, I'm so cool, look at me smoking cigars. Yeah. I'm so cultured. They stink and they're gross looking. So, but the two of them, the two professors, keep like glancing at each other like she's spewing nonsense. Like everything that's coming out of her mouth is gibberish. Like she's talking in tongues or something, okay? She's very clearly flustered. Right, as she's talking, she's talking really fast. She's like, flipping through her pages, notes, to, yeah. But from what she's saying, makes sense. It just sounds like she's extremely nervous, which
weird.
I would be like, yeah, this is, as her friend put it, if you fail, it's another 12 months and $20,000 to get your master's. Yeah. So like, I would be nervous as all hell too, you know. But they're just kind of like looking at each other like, what is she talking about? Like, they are very concerned for her kind of a look. And I'm like, maybe as, like, therapists, they're like, the fuck is wrong with her kind of, you know? Yeah. But she finally, like, kind of just like, will you excuse me? And then gets up and they're like, okay, sure. And so she goes out into the hallway and I guess that was her failing. That was, like, she failed it, you know? Yeah. So later she's at her apartment. She's sitting in her bathtub because she's depressed, you know? Which, I mean, yeah, they have every right to be. Yeah. Well, her phone rings and her voicemail picks up and it's Paul and he's like, listen, Julia, I'm really sorry about the other night. You know, he's like, I was a little drunk. This is my formal apology. I'm really sorry. You know, I know you had your defense today. I really want to hear it. He's like, I'm sure you killed it. Just call and talk to me back, you know, like, and if you don't call me back, I'll take that as a sign that I need to call and keep harassing you. So love you, bye. And like gets off the phone and she's just like, whatever, you know. And is like trying to relax. And then the phone rings again. And so she's like, Paul! And like gets up and goes to go answer it. And she's like, hello, Paul. And it's not Paul.
Of course.
It is Sam. Mm-hmm. So she is dressed later and she's going to Sam and Terry's flat. Rides up the elevator and everything. She gets there and she sees all of his paintings and stuff. And he's like, yeah, depressing, aren't they? And she was like, yeah, I mean, they're all just black, you know? I mean, they've got texture and everything on them too. And he goes, no, but don't you get it? Don't you see them? Like, you understand them, don't you? And she's like, I mean, nah. She's like, I don't see anything. And he's like, it's not about seeing it. It's about feeling it. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Because she's very much in denial of everything, you know? And he's like, whatever. I've been reading Billy's journal more. And she's like, okay. And he's like, and Terry is missing. And she's like, missing? And she's like, what do you mean? He's like, she didn't come home last night. The rec center called and they said that they found her clothes in her bag in the locker room. And she was like, maybe she just forgot her stuff. And he's like, and what, left the building? Yeah, he's like, left the building in her bathing suit. And he's like, whatever. I've already called the police, but they're not going to find anything. And she was like, okay, what are you talking about? And he just like, well, starts reading off things from Billy's journal about how when he was 5, he was taken to their world and marked. But the mark fades when they come back to our world, right? They only mark kids who have night terrors. But the mark comes back, and if the mark does come back, it means they're coming for you. It's how they find you again, right? And the mark on his hand had gotten worse and worse, and he said that he pulled something out of it.
Ew.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I cannot do.
Yep. So he had pulled out some kind of like this barb thing, and he drew it in his journal. I don't know why he didn't like put it in the journal.
Tape it.
Yeah, because he taped like Band-Aids and stuff in there.
Ew.
So like, I don't know. Yep.
Yuck.
Anyway, yep. And she's like, Sam, this is crazy, like, you know, but she was like, I do kind of remember what that mark was, you know?
Yeah.
And Sam was like, listen, I didn't see Billy's mark, but I saw Terry's, and it sure looked a hell of a lot like this. And he pulls his shirt off to the side, and he has the same exact mark that Terry and Billy had right there on his chest, right? And she's like, what the fuck, you know? Anyway, she leaves. She's back at her psychologist's office. The doctor, I never caught his name. She said it a couple of times, but I never caught it. So she's back at the child psychologist's office, and there's this little girl sitting there coloring in the office. And this little girl is Bree fucking Tanner from the Twilight movies. Okay. Bree Tanner is the little vampire girl that Stephanie Myers also wrote a very short book of called The Short Life of Bree Tanner, or The Short Second Life of Bree Tanner. She's one of the vampire, like,
one of like the
armies?
family
No,
people?
she's one of the armies that Victoria creates to come in. Anyway, I rewatched the movies recently. So, but some other people might know her as Alessa or Sharon from Silent Hill. So
I have not seen those movies.
Oh yeah, they're interesting. Yeah. Anyway, so Julia starts asking her all these questions, and she's like, are you here alone? And she's like, mm-hmm. She's like, well, where's your mommy? And she's like, heaven. And she's like, oh, okay, well, and the little girl
with those questions,
right? The little girl is like, do you work here? And Julia's like, no. And she's like, I don't work here either. Like,
cute.
She's pretty cute, right? So Julia just starts kind of asking her all these questions about like, what are you here for? Do you have nightmares? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, well, what happens in these nightmares? And she's like, monsters come for me. And she's like, what do the monsters want from you? And she's like, to eat me. And like the way she says that is so heartbreaking. Like all this other shit happens in the movie, and I'm like, meh. And that little girl is like, to eat me. And I'm like, oh, you little thing.
Poor baby.
Oh, little baby. Yeah. And like, I don't even like kids, but I'm like, oh.
Protect that one.
That one, yeah. And she's just like kind of going off about how like the only thing that stops them is the lights and stuff like that. And then she goes to like move her sleeve and scratch at her arm because she also has a mark on her arm.
Baby.
Yeah.
No.
And so Julia, now at this point, is convinced that everything is true. Like, it's all true. And so she's talking to her therapist in there, you know, and she's like, but what if it is true, though? What if we are being hunted? What if it is some kind of demonic entities that when we were children, we actually, like, experienced this, and as adults, we're experiencing it again because they're coming after us. Yeah. And the doctor is like, Julia, okay, you just said that you failed your defense, right? And she was like, yeah. And he goes, okay, well, if you were a therapist, though, how do you think you would tackle this situation? Like, everything you just said, if it wasn't you, how would you take it, right? Mm-hmm. And she was like, okay. And, like, goes off for a minute about, like, as a therapist, how she would diagnose all of this stuff, right? Yeah. And it's, like, very practical the way you think about it, you know? And he was like, you're gonna make a great psychologist someday. And she was like, oh, thanks, you know? So she gets up to leave because I guess that was their hour. And
we're done
he
here.
goes, one more thing, Julia. If you, like, if all of these people are marked and you really think these creatures are coming back for you, don't you think you would have a mark? And she was like, instead of feeling relieved, freaks the fuck out and goes to Paul's house and like is standing there in her underwear.
Search me.
Yeah, she's standing there in her underwear, and he's like, "What am I looking for again?" And she's like, "Just some kind of like mark, like a sore or something." And he's like, "Okay, well, I don't see anything." And I'm like, "You don't even have your bra and panties off, but whatever, you know, like it could straight up be anywhere, but yeah, it's fine." And he's like, "Listen, not that I minded, but why did I just do that?" You know? And she kind of like is trying to explain to him, and he's like, "What are you talking about?" But she again explains very poorly what she's talking about, but he's also at the same time like, honey, I think you're really stressed out, and I think you're just letting things get to you.
You're going a little crazy.
Right? And so they start making out, and
yeah, because she's half naked.
She's
so,
half naked,
you know.
Yep. That happens. Anyway, we're back at Sam's flat, and he's painting, and the whole place is covered in candles. He's got all of these lit candles all over the place, right? Yeah. And just smearing black paint on canvas. And then we see, like, you know how, like, when the heat mirage, when you're driving and you see the heat in the distance?
Wavy.
That's what it looks like, goes up to his sprinkler system, and the sprinkler system goes off. So, I don't know. Anyway, the sprinkler system puts out all the candles, okay, but also, like, fries all of the lights that he has on inside, too, right? They all pop and freaking out, and he's all like, what the fuck? So he runs to the front door thinking that there must be some kind of a fire going on if the sprinkler system's going on, right? But he gets to the door and he starts, like, unlocks the door and he hears noises in the hallway. So he looks through the little peephole and he sees the creatures crawling down the hall to, like, on the side of the walls towards him. And he is like, nope. And he goes to try to go out a window, but the window, like, he, like, smashes open the window and still doesn't go down the fire escape. Anyway, because he sees the elevator come up. So he goes down into the elevator and the elevator does that stupid, like, it's wet. So it's now, like, freaking out and, like, because there's water just pouring.
The main rule of fires is don't take the elevator.
Yeah, but he obviously knows it's the creatures coming at him now, not a fire.
Okay,
so, like, but still.
Everything's freaking out.
Yeah.
Like, so why would you take the electrical
Exactly. So
elevator?
why would you put yourself in a small,
in a box?
not escapable box?
No.
Yeah.
I would not.
I would have gone out the window.
Yeah.
Like, anyway.
You already broke it. You might as well.
Exactly. Yep. So he goes out, but the elevator, like, seems like it's gonna fall. Like, he's freaking out. He's grabbing onto it because the elevator's just... There's so much shaky camera shit during this part. And anyway, so it stops partway through, or partway on a floor, right? So, like, the elevator's still up here, and he, like, rolls out of it to get to the floor because he's like, I'm not gonna be stuck in this elevator when it hits the ground. You know, like, I'm not gonna do that. And then the elevator turns or like drops again, kind of a thing. So he freaks out and jumps back a little bit because obviously it's right there, but it's still only partially through the floor, right? And he's standing there staring at it, and there's a bit, like, a good gap underneath the elevator and the elevator shaft still, right? Well, something grabs his feet and yanks him down the elevator shaft.
Cool.
Sam dead.
Would not have happened if you went down the fire escape, but maybe you would just get shoved off the building.
Maybe, I don't know. Like, I don't know what's the worst way to die
right?
here, so, like, I don't fucking know.
Who knows?
We're back at Paul's apartment, and Paul and Julia are just getting dressed after brown chicken, brown cowing.
Right.
And she gets, like, stands up, I guess, to get dressed. And his roommate barges in.
Oh, good.
And she, instead of, like, doing anything, just, like, turns around and is like, ah! And, like, covers herself. So she's, like, got her bare butt to him now, right? And he's like, oh, hello, nurse. And then Paul is like, get out! Like, and yells at him and throws a pillow at him. And I was like, that's a little funny. But, like, she didn't even, like, she didn't grab a blanket. She didn't be like, oh, my gosh, like, get out. Like, she just, like, and turns around and, like, covers her, like...
She just thought that the front was worse than the back, I guess.
Non-existent boobs. And this woman is so skinny.
Yeah.
She's so skinny.
I mean,
and she's
was
got, like,
2002.
She's got a very long neck, too. Like, she's just
If you are not real thin in 2002, you are nothing.
Yeah, she was
so
a very skinny woman. So, yeah. So she is talking to Paul out in her hallway and stuff, and he's like, are you sure you're not mad? She's like, I'm not mad. I'm just embarrassed. You know, she clearly seems to be feeling a little better about things, you know. And he's like, well, okay, I love you. I'll talk to you soon. She's like, I love you too. Bye. And then leaves and goes home. And she gets into her apartment and all the lights are on. She left her apartment with all the lights on.
Okay.
But she gets there, she turns on the TV, and the news is talking about how the rolling blackouts are gonna, like, get progressively worse, kind of a thing. Like, they've been getting bad, but they're probably gonna get worse. And she's just like, oh man, that really sucks. And the TV's like, please turn off extra lights to reserve any kind of electricity, kind of to help with all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And she doesn't.
She's like, no.
She's like, no, I'm good. But then she looks over and she sees her closet door still open, like just partially open, but she can't see anything inside. Partially. Oh my gosh, what is wrong with me?
Sorry, I tried to not laugh.
Partway open. I'm struggling today. Partially open. And she's just kind of looking at it and she hears a noise come from in it, but she's like, okay, this is getting ridiculous. I'm an adult. This is a joke. Like, this is clearly, like, I need to stop it, you know? Yeah. So she gets up and she goes over into the closet to turn on the light and be like, look, there's nothing in here, self. There's nothing in here, you know, but the light won't turn on. And so she's like, okay, whatever. But then she hears something just beyond the clothes. So she moves the clothes out of the way.
No.
And there's one of the creatures there, right? And it screams at her. So she screams and goes flying back, kicks the closet door shut, and sprints from the building, right?
Okay.
Like, sprints out of her building onto the street and is, like, having, like, a weird manic, like, she suddenly doesn't know where she is. She's running into people. she looks over and she sees that a door is open to a Chinese restaurant and like light is flooding from the kitchen. So she sprints down there, goes through their kitchen.
Like an alley kitchen door?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like goes into this like restaurant where there's just a bunch of Chinese people yelling at each other as they're cooking, because it's a restaurant. It's and there's a lot of like chickens hanging from this. Anyway.
Oh boy.
So she gets in there and she runs into their bathroom because the lights are still working in there. And she realizes as she's like in the bathroom that her forehead is bleeding. And she's like, what the heck? So she goes to see what's wrong. She maybe thought that she hid it while she was trying to get out of the closet and stuff. But like she's looking and she realizes that it looks exactly the same. Yeah. And it's right under her hairline. So like her hair was covering it, right? It's the same exact mark that Sam had and that, Billy had and stuff, right? But she sees something poking out of it. So she yanks out this like 2-inch long barb. Okay, but like it's like super long, but then it has like the hook on the end, like it's like like so it goes in easy, but it doesn't come out easy, kind of a thing. Yeah. She rips that out of her forehead. Okay, and drops it in the sink. She doesn't bring it with her. She drops it in the sink. Okay. Well, freaking out, she goes back to Paul's house because sure. So she gets there and is pounding on the door because he's asleep now at this point. It's late into the night. And he gets up, he comes out to her. She shows him that that her forehead's bleeding. Like, she's like, look, I have the same mark that Billy did and blah, blah, blah. And is just like talking nonsense gibberish, just like keeps going off and off and off. And like, but none of her sentences are really connecting because she's so freaked out that she's like saying one thing here and then continuing it over here, but she's saying something right here and here and here. Like, so it's all over the place. And he's like, what the fuck happened to your forehead? And she's like, it was a thing. I threw the thing out of my head. And he's like, you pulled what out of your head? And she's like, a thing. It was a thing. And he grabs his EMT kit, brings it over, is like getting it out because you think that he's gonna like treat the wound and whatever, but he pulls out a little plastic cup, fills it with water, and then opens a pill like into it, right? And so he drops the powder in there. She's still rambling and he's like, gives it to her and he's like, drink that. And she just drinks it because she trusts him instead, which I mean, it was good of him to do so, but like it's just she's clearly manic at this point, and so he's like, I need her to calm down and stuff. And so he's like, it's okay, sit down, it's all right, it's okay, you're gonna be asleep soon, you're gonna be all right. And she's like, what, and like freaks out. She's like, I can't go to sleep, and is like screaming about it. And he's like, honey, I'm not gonna let anything happen to you, I'm gonna be right here, I'm gonna keep you safe, nothing's gonna happen. And she's like, okay. And he's like, sit down, I'm gonna get you a clean pair of clothes because it's like covered in blood and stuff. And he's like, just wait right here, you're gonna be all right. So he leaves her to go into the other room, and he's like, listen, what you've been through is completely understandable. You've had a really tough week, okay? You're okay. Everything's gonna be fine. And he comes out, and she's gone. Yeah. She clearly bolted out the door, and I don't know why he left her alone, but
Nope.
Anyway, suddenly she's in the subway, going down the stairs. Okay. And she goes up to the subway tunnel and throws up, right? Like just barfs it all out because she can't fall asleep. She makes herself throw up, right? But behind her, the gate that like they used to close it suddenly drops, and she freaks out because now she's stuck in the subway. Yeah. So she runs up there. She's trying to get the gate to open, but it doesn't open because it's not gonna. Yeah. But then a subway car pulls up, and so she like runs and jumps into the subway car because it's like super lit up and bright, right? So she's sitting in there. The subway car just kind of like goes off, and she's like, "Hey, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm safe right now because there's lights."
You're stuck in a metal box.
Yeah. And I don't know why she would have thought that she wasn't safe with Paul, but anyway, because she's just freaking out. Anyway, so she's there, she's in that, and all of a sudden it stops. Because all the lights start going out and electricity is like freaking out, right? Yeah. So she gets out of the subway car and goes into the tunnel because that's so much safer than being in a subway car. Okay. And is very quickly attacked by the creatures because obviously, right?
Dumb bitch.
Right. And I don't know what constitutes as when the electricity starts back up on its own or not, or if the creature's powers just aren't strong enough to hold something as big as a subway, but like the subway train car turns back on and the lights come blaring on, so the creatures that were attacking her are now no longer attacking her, right? And so she gets up, sees that the subway car starts pulling away, like going because it's gonna go, and she starts chasing after it, but not sprinting. They didn't show that she got hurt. Okay. Like, I mean, obviously the things took her to the ground and were like on top of her, but like she's like, wait like for me, no, she's still running, but like not hobbling, but like it's more of like
a walk jog.
Yeah,
like when you need to cross the street really quickly, but you don't want to run.
Yeah, that kind of a jog. Like,
sorry cars, I will walk quickly and almost jog.
But like, that's what she's doing. I would be sprinting after that thing. Like, it didn't show that she'd gotten hurt. She wasn't hobbling. Like, it didn't show that she was injured.
Yeah, and it's a subway car.
Yeah.
They go per fast.
Yeah.
So.
And she's not going after, like, she's just like, wait, stop.
Who are you yelling
No
for?
one's on it.
No.
They don't work like that. She lives there. And she anyway.
I mean, don't they have drivers?
Yeah, but like, she was at the end of the car.
Oh.
So like.
So no one. No one.
No one. So it obviously takes off and she isn't able to catch up to it because, you know, she's walking as fast as a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
So she's kind of looking around. And I guess how their tunnels work is they have multiple tunnels and just like some wall in between them.
Okay.
I don't know. Anyway, she sees a door that leads to another tunnel. So she goes through the door into the other tunnel, okay?
Okay.
And she looks over and she sees that there's this, like, emergency green light sitting there, like, just little lantern thingy that is obviously for the service guys
like
to come down and fix. Yeah,
yeah,
for maintenance people to come fix things, right? So she's down there and runs up to it and is, like, sitting at it like it is her absolute salvation. And I'm like, people have gotten grabbed by these things with lights existing around them. Like, Sam died and the elevator lights were blaring. Yeah. Like, it's
so
just...
There's nothing.
It's not. Anyway, it fritzes out and she freaks out and looks up to see that a subway car is now coming towards her, right?
Good.
She
yes.
can, you know.
Good.
So, like a rational person, she runs towards it, screaming, "Stop, please!"
Okay.
Do you know how fast those things are going?
Very fast.
Do you think they would stop?
Absolutely not.
No. They would not
couldn't.
be. It couldn't.
Yeah. Whether or not the conductor was like, "Oh fuck,"
yeah,
like, you're dead.
You're dead. Like, but she dives out of the way at the last second onto the other side of the platform.
Okay.
Or whatever. And she's still in the tunnels, right?
Yeah.
And she looks up and she sees, like, this box of pipes. And so she grabs a pipe, like she's going to use it to defend herself.
Okay.
But the second she grabs the pipe, one of the creatures jumps at her. And there's also this, like, tunnel. But it looks like it's like a big sewage kind of tunnel, but it doesn't go down, it goes to the side.
Like, the sewage pipe is just like
but
in
it's
the
like
wall.
but it's like open. So like I don't know what fucking kind of Spider-Man era tunnels are just open down here. Like,
okay.
I just
Ninja Turtles.
So it grabs her and tries to yank her into the tunnel, right? But because she's grabbing onto the pipe, she was holding the pipe to defend herself, it catches. So it's the only thing keeping her from like being sucked in. But those things are still yanking on her.
Yeah.
But the subway car is still going past, okay? But it's like flickering lights at her, but like the creatures don't seem to care about that. But the second it passes, there's other lights now there suddenly. There's other kind of lights. And it stops the creatures, right? So she manages to crawl out of the tunnel, looks up and sees that there is a ladder leading to a grate outside, right? Yeah. So she climbs up the ladder to get out there. Is she able to get it open? No. Do the creatures grab her again? Yes, they do. So they drag her back down the ladder. I feel like this part of the movie...
They're just playing games
I know.
At this point.
I feel like this part of the movie was just like, fucking kill,
just be done.
Like they really wanted you to think she was going to win here,
yeah.
kind of, you know, and stuff. And so she's being dragged, I think, back towards the tunnel thingy right there. And she manages to find this broken piece of glass in, like, all the rubble that's just kind of around and just starts slashing at the creatures, you know. But obviously that's not going to stop them, I guess. And just
ghost smoke demon people.
Yeah.
So
I just don't fucking know. Anyway, but she hears yelling coming towards her, and these 3 utility workers come running, and they've got these huge flashlights, right? Like the big ones, and coming at her,
paper clips and glue,
coming at her, big ones, and they come up to her and they're like, "Oh my gosh, lady, are you okay?" And she turns and slashes at one of them, slashes him across the chest with a piece of glass.
Jeez.
And is just absolutely manic right now. Like, because she thinks that everything's coming to kill her, which I don't entirely blame her.
Yeah,
but like,
fair.
But the utility workers are like, "Ma'am, calm down. Hey." And she's still just like freaking out. So one of them takes his flashlight and like clocks her upside the head with it. Because I would have to, you know? Because she just like stabbed a guy, you know? Like, that's, yeah. Well, a little bit later, we're in a hospital and we see Paul talking to her childhood therapist as they're walking down a hallway together, just kind of talking. And he's like, I don't know what happened. She just was like manic and then she ran out of the apartment and stuff and just like, tell me she's going to be okay. And he's like, we're going to keep her here. We're going to monitor her. Like, I'm sure everything's going to be fine, right? Well, we hear her wake up in another room screaming, right? So he goes running in there to check on her and stuff, and they come up and they're like, hey, honey, it's okay. It's all right. We're here. And she's like, where am I? And he's like, it's all right. You were found in the subway. Like, it's, you hit your head. You've got a concussion. Like, it's okay. Go back to sleep.
No.
That's what they told her.
No.
You have a concussion. Go back to sleep.
No.
Like,
rule number 1.
but that's what they tell her. Go back to sleep. So, just... Fuck, anyway.
I mean, she was already sleeping, so maybe they're just like, hey, if you were gonna die, you would have died.
What's worse, she's already stabbing people in the subway. You know, like, it's fine, right? So she's just kind of chilling there for a second, and Paul's like, it's all right, I'm still here, you're okay, we're gonna let you rest. So they both leave, you know, and she gets up, and she goes to go to the door, and, like, tries to pull it open, but it's obviously locked.
Yeah.
And she's like, what the hell? And looks out the window, because they have, like, the windows that you can peek in on them and stuff. And she looks, and directly across from her room are these 2 big open doors that lead into, like, a rec room, you know?
Okay.
And she sees all these other crazy people.
Yeah.
But my favorite is that they're showing a couple people that are doing weird things. Like, there's this lady with these 2 combs that are just, like... like rubbing them against each other, right? They show a couple of other people doing weird things, like listlessly walking around. They show a dude sitting there smoking. He's just smoking. He's just like,
here I am.
He's just an old guy smoking, and they're like, yep, he's crazy. He's clearly insane. Like, just...
Like, I get that there are, like, legitimately, like, far gone people, but most of the people in these places are not. They're not. No.
Yeah. And he's just smoking. And I just was like, okay. Anyway, so, but then the 2 doors, like, shut, okay? And as soon as they shut, the hallway gets dark. And she's standing there looking out the window, and all of a sudden the creature comes in and smashes the window and screeches at her and stuff, right?
Yeah.
She screams, and the doctor who hears this, who's standing down the hallway with a nurse, he's, like, signing off on something, like, runs towards her, and a male nurse comes in as well. Or I don't know what they're called. Like, anyway, he comes in.
Yeah, nurse.
And they see that she's not in there. And the nurse is like, how do you get out of a locked room, right?
Yeah.
Like, what
this
the
is
fuck,
what
you know?
it's for.
And there's broken glass all over the window. And this is the kind of glass that you can't really break because it has the
crosshatch.
Yeah, the crosshatch wires in there, so that you can't, like, not only break it, but then get out of the room from that, you know? So they're looking around. The nurse is looking under the bed. There is a closet door. And so the doctor goes over and pulls open the closet, but he doesn't see anything in there. But he does see some coat hangers shaking like they've been bumped.
Why would there be... What kind of coat hangers?
Wire coat hangers.
Why would there be wire coat hangers in the closet in a mental institution room?
Yep. I have no idea.
Hard word to say right now.
Because I worked at a girls' facility for a long time.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to have shit like
have
that.
Shit.
You can't. So,
No,
like...
it's like a jail. You can't have shit.
Because anything could hurt themselves.
Yeah.
Like, they weren't even allowed to have staples.
I was just going to say
like,
that. Yeah.
You can't even have staples.
Anything.
Yeah.
No.
So, like, they weren't even allowed to have the wooden pencils with the metal end caps.
No, because that shit is sharp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, you can't have shit like that, right?
No.
Anyway, so he's looking in, obviously doesn't see anything. The nurse is like, what's wrong? And he's like, I don't know. And he's like, do you see anything? And he's like, no. But on the other side, we see from the inside of the closet, Julia comes running up and, like, is smacking against this, like, clear, filmy barrier.
Right.
And she's in the tunnel, again, that she saw from her medicine cabinet, right?
Oh, okay.
So she's there, and she's, like, banging against this, like, invisible barrier that they can't see her on, but she can clearly see them. And she's screaming for help and for them to, like, you know, see her and stuff, but they obviously can't see her. And she keeps looking behind her, and you can see and hear the creatures moving with the little bones in the bags and, like, just kind of noises. And she's freaking out because she doesn't want to be in there,
Rightfully
you know?
so.
And is, like, begging for them to help her, but the therapist just shuts the door.
Aww.
And then any light that was there is now canceled out, and she just kind of, like...
Here I die.
and turns around and faces these creatures as one launches at her, and that's it. End of the movie. However...
Oh.
This movie has an alternate ending.
Oh.
It does.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. The alternate ending is that right when the creature smashes through the window for her in the room, the hospital room, she screams and jumps back, thinking that the glass is going to come at her and the creature's going to be there. And there's no creature, and the glass is not broken. So she's
just fucking crazy.
She's just crazy.
I don't know which one I prefer.
Mm-hmm.
I think the crazy.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
So,
Okay.
But you can't see the alternate ending unless you own the DVDs.
Oh.
So if you go, because I watched this one on Prime, but yeah, if you watch it on Prime, it ends with the first ending.
Oh, okay.
Not the alternate ending. Because the first time I watched this, because I rented the DVD back at Hollywood Video.
Yeah.
I saw the other ending, where she was crazy. But then I was looking at it later because it has like the deleted scenes, but then it also had an alternate ending and showed that. Weird. So I was like, okay, all right.
So you originally saw the crazy version. Mm-hmm. Weird. Okay.
Yeah, I knew that there was alternate endings for it, but yeah.
So you don't think it deserves 4.8?
No, I do not.
I mean, the retelling of it was pretty... Everything you tell is better than the original story, but, like, it was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, like, I could definitely see... Like, we rented it to watch... Do you remember that year that we did the bomb-ass party in my basement?
Yeah.
The Halloween party?
Yeah.
We rented it to watch it that night, but we ended up watching it the night before when we carved pumpkins.
Oh.
So, we were just down in the basement watching this movie. And it's spooky.
Yeah.
But... not very good.
You don't get scared about anything.
I don't get scared about anything, it's true. So. But, yeah. Filming wise, it was very much a 2002 kind of crappy movie. I mean, like, it was decently filmed. Oh, the boyfriend, Paul, was in, like, a couple seasons of Buffy, so, like, the acting, like, the actors were pretty good.
Yeah.
Her acting was not bad.
Did it come out in theaters? Because it sounds familiar, but I haven't seen it.
I'm not sure if it came out in theaters. Because if it did, I didn't ever hear about it being in theaters. So,
I mean,
maybe
we
it just
were
didn't come
11.
Here. It's true.
So.
It's true. Were we really 11?
Yeah. In 2002? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we are that old. Anyway, yeah, so, like, it was okay filmed, I guess. Like, they just kept, like, there were so many scenes where, like, it would only be spooky if they had to keep moving the camera, so they had to keep moving the camera, and I was like, if it didn't have that, it wouldn't have been a scary movie. There was too many of the crappy jump scares that led nowhere, that did nothing, that,
And you know they're coming.
They're coming.
Yeah.
The creatures were interesting in concept. That's what that's what they call them. They are the creatures, right? Like, the whole concept, like, the spooky, creepy noises they could make, like, just, that was the scariest part to me, was the noises they made, not what they looked like. Yeah. Because they just looked like...
But even that concept is, like, so overdone at this point. Maybe it wasn't in 2002, but, like, now
it was
everywhere.
Like, meh.
There's, like, 6 of those
that
I can think of right now.
Yeah, and it was just meh.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a meh story overall. It was a meh thing, just meh.
Okay.
I don't recommend people to watch this unless they're, like, that bored, right? The effects, the creatures looked awful. Like, in the darkness, they looked really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, because they were just these shadows moving around, right? But the second you could actually see them in the light, I was like...
I feel like you should never have seen them in the light.
Exactly.
No.
Never. Because, like, they just have these weird, like the Scream, the painting the Scream, where that's the face, where it's, like, just the big eyes and the mouth. Like, that's what their faces looked like. But they just looked like these weird alien frog creatures, and, like...
Okay.
Yeah, just...
I was picturing, like, a fucking scary shadow version of Cole Sprites. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I
they
picture.
were, like, they were more like a frog creature.
They should just been, like, shadows. Mm-hmm. Like, shadowy Babadook. Mm-hmm. Like,
yeah,
I don't...
But they weren't, and they were just, like, these weird little alien creatures from the darkness and stuff. The thing that makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever is... They only hunt children that have night terrors.
Right.
Not all children, just children with night terrors, okay? They attack them when they're children, mark them,
and then come back
and then come back 20 years later when they're, like, what, got more meat on their bones?
Like, why are you biding your time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what is... I don't understand.
Yeah, that seems really
why
weird.
You're taking your time. Not only that... I hate omnipotent creatures where there's, like, no way you can fight them. There's no way to fight them. No, it very clearly showed that, like, maybe it was just her. She couldn't fight them off, okay? She wasn't doing any damage when she was slashing at them or whatever, okay?
They only ran from light half the time.
Half the time, right? Yeah. Like, and only when it was directly on them. Yeah. Like, if there's just happens to be light in the room, they're like, meh.
We'll be over here.
Yeah, we'll just hang out right here. It's fine.
It's dumb.
It's completely stupid, right? Yeah. And I get for the movie purpose, there had to be some light so you could obviously see what's happening.
Sure, but there's a way to do, like, we're in the dark right now filming. Like, versus being in pitch black, obviously.
Yeah. And it just made no sense to me. I have no idea, these creatures are obviously trying to, like, farm these people. Why are you not, like, kidnapping them as children and just letting them grow into adults until you decide, that's enough meat, let's eat them?
Yeah. Or, like, what are you using them for that they need to be adults?
Yeah.
Or why?
Yeah. I just don't... Yeah. it didn't make any sense. But these omnipotent creatures that can not only, like, I can get the affecting, like, electricity. That's one thing. But somehow have the magical heat wave ability to turn on, like, a sprinkler system? Are you kidding me? That's not fair. That, to me, is cheating.
Yeah. It's one thing to make the lights flicker and all that bullshit, but that makes no sense.
But the thing that I thought was just really weird was, like, why was water involved with all of them? Okay? Yeah. Because, like, the window thing, when Billy was a kid, okay, not that it did anything, but the water was involved. When Julia was first encountering these things, the shower was running.
And the sink thing. Yeah.
And, like, okay.
And then the pool.
And then the sprinkler system. And, like, what is happening? Why is water involved? They never talk about that, but water is legitimately involved in every single thing. Yeah. So, like,
whether that's happenstance or not, that's stupid.
It's stupid. Yeah. It makes no sense to me why that has to be a thing. So, like, because Billy never says, like, oh, they can affect water too or something. Like, no.
Maybe it's like because it's a conductor of electricity.
I don't know.
Plot holes are fun.
Mm-hmm. So there was so much about this movie that I was just like, gee, it's a really good thing that they can't touch light, but can touch light, but can affect electricity, but can also affect sprinkler systems, but can also do all of this shit. Like,
and can swim and can...
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good thing they can, like, drain the power out of batteries and shit, and, like, the moonlight doesn't hurt them. Fuck that. Like, it's just...
Yeah. Okay.
Any little bit of darkness is a tunnel into their world. Like, I just...
Yeah, weird. And how, like, when she did the bathroom thing, did she reach into the tunnel behind her mirror?
Yeah.
Why was there no barrier there? Because they wanted her? They were like, come, little children.
I guess.
Okay.
And, like, the barbs, like, I'm sorry, you're telling me that you just stuck 2 inches of barb into my body and that I didn't know about it? I couldn't move my wrist and not feel that kind of a thing. I couldn't touch my head and not feel... Fucking Terry had it in her ankle. Yeah. Like, straight through her ankle. You're telling me that, like...
Is it magical?
Yeah.
Is it, like...
I don't... What? Yeah.
Okay.
So, I'm mad at this movie is all I'm saying.
Baseline.
I'm mad at the movie.
I'm sorry.
So... there was too many plots for me to enjoy it as a legitimate movie. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So.
Too much going on. That's fair.
Yep.
All right.
So I give it a 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Wow. That's a big
Mostly
demerit.
because I liked everyone but Julia.
Yeah.
So, like...
I feel like that's a trend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like, to me, they're over here like, oh, yeah, we're gonna make relatable, likable main characters. And I'm like, I fucking hate these main characters. Like, I want them to die.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
They suck.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you wanted me to be mad at Paul for, like, cutting people out of vehicles when you're over here being like, I was barely in a car accident.
And I'm not gonna tell you anything about it, but feel sorry for me.
Yeah, I was scared, and you're not sad about that. And he's like,
Well, it'd be one thing if it was also like, you told me you were gonna stop drinking. Yeah. Or like you know, like build something up, not just being like,
I can't believe you're drinking right now. Like, yeah. Like, and he's just like, I'm sorry for hanging out with my roommates.
I'm sorry that I literally had no idea that you were in a car accident.
Yeah, like, you didn't call me. You didn't say shit.
Yeah.
Like, you just showed up here.
Upset. Yeah. And like, rude.
Like, I'm drunk. Sorry. Like, But, like, she went to a bar with him earlier in the movie, so she clearly didn't have a problem with him drinking then. So it was just like...
She was just pissed. Yeah. And, like, I get it. You're going through a traumatic event and, like, shit happened that you can't explain. But, like, chill. Yeah. Chill out a little bit.
Chill out. Don't be mad at him for being drunk.
Yeah.
Like...
Take your Prozac, lady.
Yep. I feel like her and Nicole from Long Distance would be real good buddies. Yeah. Is all I'm saying.
I think they live in the same apartment building. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. That'd be great. Yeah. So...
Okay.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to my story.
Yeah, if you've seen this movie, let us know what you think, since it's been out for a while. And I feel like I remember it existing. Yeah. But that could have been from you.
Maybe.
I have no idea. But if you want to let us know what you think, you can leave a comment on YouTube, or you can send us an email at bmoviebashpodcast@gmail.com. You can watch our videos on YouTube. We have a bunch of screenshots and stuff that we're adding so that you can enjoy the pain as much as we are.
Yeah.
We also have all of our podcasts up on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Google, Amazon Music, and Audible. So anywhere you fucking want to listen to it, you can. And we also have a Kofi page. So if you'd like to support the podcast and give us your money, we'd be so grateful.
Yes, please.
But obviously you don't have to. If you have any suggestions, please let us know. Like and follow and subscribe and do all the things. And we love you.
We love you.
And we're sorry.
Yep.
Have a great time.
Have a great time.